I was gripping the hospital counter with one hand and my lower belly with the other when my husband walked in with his ex-wife on his arm. 7 months after he left me. 7 months after he told me our marriage had become too heavy. 7 months after he chose Camille Rhodes, the woman he swore was only part of his past. And there I was at Swedish First Hill in Seattle, 36 weeks and 6 days pregnant, trying very hard not to leak amniotic fluid onto my sneakers in front of a receptionist named Brenda, who looked like she had already seen 3 divorces and a parking lot fight before lunch. Julian stopped so suddenly Camille bumped into his shoulder. His eyes went straight to my stomach. Not my face, not the overnight bag in Maddie's hand, my stomach. I saw him calculate without moving his lips. That was the strange part. His whole body stayed still, but his eyes started doing math. Camille saw it too. She tightened her fingers around his arm. "Julian?" The nurse behind the desk smiled at me. "Ava Bennett, you're 36 weeks and 6 days today, right?" I closed my eyes for half a second. Honestly, if the universe had wanted to slap me, it could have just used a hand. It didn't need to bring a full audience. Julian's gaze dropped to the hospital bracelet Brenda had just printed. My name, my date of birth, my due date. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Camille recovered faster. She always did. She was wearing a cream coat, pearl earrings, and the expression of a woman who had never apologized to a waiter in her life. 7 months, she said softly but loud enough for me to hear. "Julian, don't let her do this." Maddie, my best friend, shifted beside me. Maddie was an ER nurse and 5 feet 4 inches of unpaid emotional security. "Do what? Be pregnant in public?" Camille ignored her. Her eyes stayed on Julian. "You left 7 months ago." Julian finally looked at my face. "Ava, how far along are you?" A contraction pulled low and hot across my back. I grabbed the counter harder. Brenda looked nervous. "Ma'am, do you need a wheelchair?" "Yes," Maddie said. "No," I said, because pride is a disease and apparently I had chosen to suffer from it. Julian stepped forward. "Ava, answer me." That made something cold in me wake up. For 7 months, I had answered silence. I had answered blocked calls, unanswered emails, returned dignity, and nights spent building a crib with one swollen foot propped on a paint can. Now he wanted answers? I looked at him, then at Camille's hand gripping his sleeve. "Long enough," I said, "for you to start counting back." The color didn't leave his face. Worse, the certainty did. 7 months earlier, I still believed Julian and I were the kind of married couple who could survive a bad season. That sounds sweet now. Also stupid, like saying a paper umbrella can survive a hurricane if it has enough hope. We lived in a small townhouse in Queen Anne with crooked stairs, too many houseplants, and a kitchen drawer that refused to close unless you threatened it personally. Julian worked in real estate investment. I managed donor events for an arts nonprofit. We were busy, tired, and sometimes boring in a way that felt safe. Then Camille came back. At first, she was just a name lighting up his phone. Camille Rhodes, his ex-wife. He told me her mother was sick. He told me she needed help understanding some property issue from their divorce. He told me I was kind for being patient. I wanted to be kind. That was my first mistake. Then dinner ran late, then his phone face down. Then he started wearing the gray sweater Camille had once bought him. The one he claimed he hated because it itched emotionally, whatever that meant. I asked him if something was happening. He sighed like I had asked him to carry a piano uphill. "Ava, not everything is betrayal." Funny. Men say that most often when betrayal is already wearing shoes in the hallway. The night he left, rain scratched against the windows. I remember because I was standing in the kitchen holding a mug of ginger tea, trying not to throw up. I had been nauseous for a week, but I thought it was stress. My period was late, but stress can do that. Marriage falling apart can apparently do a full renovation on your body. Julian stood across from me with a duffel bag by his feet. "I need space," he said. "Space has a name now?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Don't make this ugly." It was already ugly. It had packed a bag. He told me Camille understood him in a way I didn't anymore. He said our marriage had become pressure. He said he felt judged every time he came home. I asked him to stay one night to talk. One night before he burned down 2 years of marriage. He picked up the duffel. 2 days later, Camille came by for some of his things. She stood in my doorway in a beige trench coat smelling like expensive soap and victory. "I know this hurts," she said, "but Julian and I have history." "So did the Titanic," I said. "Still sank." Her smile thinned. A week after that, I peed on a pregnancy test at 6:18 in the morning. 2 pink lines appeared before I finished washing my hands. I sat on the bathroom floor and laughed until I cried. Then I called Julian. He didn't answer. Back in the hospital hallway, Julian kept staring at me like I had personally violated mathematics. Camille leaned into him, her voice soft and sharp. "She's trying to make you feel guilty," Maddie snorted. "Amazing. A pregnant woman in labor at a hospital, clearly a long con." Another contraction hit, lower this time, meaner. I bent forward and breathed through my teeth. Julian moved toward me automatically, like muscle memory had briefly defeated betrayal. I lifted one hand. "Don't." He stopped. That one word did more damage than a scream would have. I saw it land. He used to be the person I reached for when I was scared. Now his hand looked like something I needed protection from. Brenda finally rolled over a wheelchair. "Miss Bennett, we need to get you checked." "Yes," Maddie said, already guiding me into it. "Before this turns into a hallway episode of rich people making bad decisions." Camille's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "You are excused," Maddie said. "Go with God or a therapist. Dealer's choice." I almost laughed, then winced because apparently contractions and comedy were not friends. Julian followed as Maddie pushed me toward maternity triage. "I need to talk to her," he told the nurse. "She needs to be assessed," Maddie said. "I'm her husband." I looked back at him. "Are you?" The hallway went quiet for one ugly second. Legally, yes. Emotionally, he had mailed that title back with no return address. Julian's face tightened. "Ava, please." Camille caught up, breathing harder than a woman in 4-inch heels wanted to admit. "Julian, this is exactly what she wants. She knew you would be here." I turned in the wheelchair. "I knew you'd be at the maternity floor of my hospital today?" Camille blinked. "That would require me to be psychic," I said. "And if I were psychic, I would have avoided the entire marriage." Maddie whispered. "Nice." A nurse in navy scrubs opened the triage door. "Only authorized support people past this point." Julian stepped forward again. "I'm the father." The word father hit me so hard I forgot to breathe. Camille went still. Maddie's hand settled on my shoulder. I looked at Julian carefully. "That's a very big word to try on in a hallway." His eyes dropped again to my stomach. "Did you know when I left?" There it was. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Are you safe?" Not, "Have you been doing this alone?" "Did you know?" As if the real injury was information arriving late to him. The nurse waited. I turned away. "Maddie is my support person." Julian said my name once more, but the door closed between us before he could turn it into a demand. Inside the room, I finally let myself shake. I had tried to tell him. That was the part people never understood later. They liked simple stories. Woman hides pregnancy. Man discovers baby. Everyone yells near a vending machine. Real life was messier. Real life was me sitting on the bathroom floor with a pregnancy test in my hand, calling Julian 4 times before the sun came up. Real life was leaving a voicemail so shaky I sounded like I was reporting a minor earthquake. "Julian, please call me. It's important." He did it. So I texted, "We need to talk. I think I'm pregnant." The message stayed delivered, not read. The next day I emailed him. Then I emailed his work address because humiliation, apparently, has levels and I was speed-running them. No response. 3 days later, I went to my first appointment alone. The baby was tiny then. A flicker. A strange little promise on a black and white screen. I cried so hard the ultrasound tech handed me tissues and asked if I wanted someone called. I said no. Because who was I going to call? The man who had left? The woman who had taken his calls? Maddie was the first person I told in person. She showed up at my apartment with soup, saltines, and the kind of fury usually found in small dogs with boundary issues. "I'll kill him," she said. "I'm pregnant, not widowed." Yet. Maddie. Fine. I'll emotionally inconvenience him. That was the first time I laughed after Julian left. A week later, I mailed a certified letter to the Bellevue apartment where Camille lived and where Julian had started staying. Inside were copies of the pregnancy confirmation, my first ultrasound report, and a handwritten note. "Julian, I don't know what we are anymore, but you deserve to know this. I'm pregnant. The timing means this happened before you left. I'm not asking you to come back today. I'm asking you to call me and talk like an adult. Ava, I checked the tracking every hour like a woman with no hobbies and one crumbling life. Delivered. Signed for. But Julian never called. Instead, 2 days later I got a text from his number. Stop using this to pull me back. If there is a baby, we'll handle it through lawyers. I read it in the grocery store parking lot. Then I sat there for 20 minutes while my ice cream melted and a man in a Subaru honked because apparently my heartbreak was blocking his access to almond milk. That text ended something in me. Hope, maybe. Or the version of love that keeps knocking after the house is empty. In the hospital room 7 months later, Maddie was adjusting the monitor around my belly when I showed her that text again. She read it twice, then her face changed. Ava, she said slowly, are you absolutely sure he sent this? Dr. Priya Shah came in with calm eyes and a tablet tucked under her arm. I liked Dr. Shah because she never said things like, try to relax, while holding medical instruments. She understood that telling a pregnant woman to relax during contractions was like telling a smoke alarm to use its indoor voice. You're having regular contractions, she said. Not very active labor yet, but close enough that I want to monitor you. Great, I said. Love being medically interesting. Maddie stood beside the bed with my phone in her hand, still staring at Julian's old text. Dr. Shah checked the screen. Any stressors today? Maddie barked out a laugh. I said, ran into my husband and his ex-wife in the lobby. Dr. Shah paused. That would qualify. My husband who left 7 months ago, I added, because apparently my mouth had decided to provide the director's cut. Dr. Shah's expression softened, but not in that pitying way I hated. More like she had put the information somewhere safe. Who do you want as your emergency contact? I almost said Julian. Habit is embarrassing. It lingers after love has already packed its bags. Maddie Cole, I said. Maddie's shoulders dropped like she had been waiting 7 months to hear that. Dr. Shah updated the chart. No one comes in unless you approve. No one? No one. Relief hit so fast my eyes burned. After she left, Maddie stepped into the corner and called Nora Whitaker, a family lawyer she knew from a case involving a custody disaster, and, as Maddie described it, a man with the moral structure of wet cardboard. Nora asked us to send everything. The pregnancy records, the certified letter receipt, the text from Julian's number, the call logs, the emails. I lay there while monitors clicked and hummed around me, listening to Maddie speak in her nurse voice, which was basically her normal voice with fewer threats. 20 minutes later, Julian texted me. Did you know when I left? I stared at the words until they blurred. Then another message came. Ava, please, I need to understand. He needed. I had needed him at the first ultrasound. I had needed him when I assembled the crib wrong and cried because one screw rolled under the dresser. I had needed him when I felt the baby move for the first time and whispered it to an empty room. Now he needed to understand. I typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. Then Nora called Maddie back. Maddie put her on speaker. Nora's voice was smooth, low, and dangerous. Ava, the certified letter was signed for. I know, I said. The signature is readable. My heart thumped once, hard. It isn't Julian's, Nora said. Maddie looked at me. I already knew. Nora continued. It says Camille Rhodes. Julian came back to the maternity floor alone. No Camille on his arm, no cream coat, no polished little smile floating behind him like perfume with teeth. Just Julian, standing outside the glass door to triage, looking like a man who had opened the wrong drawer and found a loaded past. Maddie opened the door only halfway. She said 10 minutes, she told him. Not 11, not 10 plus a dramatic pause. He nodded. When he walked in, I noticed ridiculous things. His hair was damp from the rain. His left cuff was wrinkled. He still wore the watch I gave him on our first anniversary, the one I saved 3 months for, and later regretted not pawning out of spite. He stopped at the foot of the bed. I hated that he looked tired. I hated more that part of me still cared. How are you? He asked. I glanced down at my belly monitor. Occupied. His mouth trembled like he almost smiled, then remembered he had not earned humor. Ava, he said, I never got your letter. I know that now. His eyes closed for a second. And the text, I continued. The one telling me to handle the baby through lawyers. Did you send it? No. The answer came too fast to be performed. That did not save him. I looked at him. You left me. You moved in with her. You ignored my calls before anyone had to fake anything. He swallowed. Camille told me needed time, he said. She said you were angry and didn't want contact unless it was through attorneys. And you believed her. I thought. No, I said. You didn't think. Thinking would have required calling your wife. That hit. Good. He sat in the chair beside the bed without asking, then seemed to remember he had no right, and half stood again. Sit, I said, because watching him hover was making me nauseous and I had enough going on internally. He sat. I was wrong, he said. I laughed once. It came out dry. That's a lovely bumper sticker. I know it's not enough. Do you? His eyes filled, and I looked away because his tears were not allowed to become my emergency. My phone buzzed on the tray. Julian looked down before I could cover it. Camille, do not let her trap you. She planned this. Julian's face changed. I tilted the screen toward him. Still want to tell me she's just misunderstood? He stared at the message. Then his own phone started ringing. Camille. He didn't answer. For the first time since I had known him, Julian let Camille's call go to voicemail. It should have felt like justice. Instead, another contraction hit, sharp enough to steal the air from my lungs. Julian stood. Ava? Maddie rushed in. I gripped the rail and breathed through it. Outside the room, Camille's voice rose in the hallway. I need to see him, now. Camille arrived like a beautiful lawsuit. She swept into the maternity waiting area with her cream coat belted tight, hair perfect, mouth tighter. Behind her came Julian's sister, Marin, who looked confused enough to be innocent and nervous enough to be useful. I am his wife, Camille snapped at the front desk. Maddie, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, said, Funny, I thought ex-wife was a full-time title. Camille ignored her. Julian needs to come with me. Julian stepped out of my room. I could see him through the narrow window in the door. He looked smaller somehow, like the hospital lights had stripped the polish off. Did you sign for Ava's letter? He asked. Camille froze. Only for a second. But lies have seams. I saw hers. What letter? She said. Marin frowned. What letter? Julian held up his phone. Nora had sent him the delivery receipt. This letter. Camille's lips parted, then closed again. That proves nothing, she said. Mail gets mixed up. It was sent to your apartment. You were living there too, and you signed. Her eyes flashed toward my door. There it was. Not fear of being accused, fear of being seen by me. I stayed in bed, one hand on my belly, listening. Dr. Shaw had told me to rest. Unfortunately, my nervous system had chosen front row seats to its own collapse. Camille lowered her voice. Julian, she is doing this on purpose. She waited until she was in labor to make you feel responsible. Maddie's phone was already in her hand, recording. Bless that woman and her aggressive thumbs. Julian said, Did you know? Camille smiled sadly, beautifully, falsely. I knew she would use anything to take you from me again. Marin inhaled sharply. Julian went still. That's not an answer, he said. Camille's voice cracked, not with grief but with anger slipping its leash. She had you for 2 years. She made you dull, guilty, small. Then the minute you came back to me, she had to find a way to drag you back. So you knew, Julian said. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Camille looked at him then, and the mask finally dropped. I knew enough, she said. And I knew if you heard the word baby, you'd run back to her like a trained dog. A sound left me, not a sob, not a laugh, something in between. The contraction that followed was brutal. The monitor beside me changed rhythm. Dr. Shaw moved fast, checking the screen. Ava, we're going to take you to labor and delivery now. Outside, Camille tried to push past Maddie. I have a right to be part of this conversation. Maddie blocked her with one arm. The conversation is now a birth. You are not invited. Camille's face twisted, and Julian finally did not move toward her. He moved toward my door. I looked at him through the glass and shook my head. Not today. Labor is not cinematic. Nobody tells you that part. Movies make it look like a sweaty spiritual experience with flattering lighting and one brave scream. In real life, I wanted ice chips, a lower back transplant, and for everyone who had ever said women are made for this, to step on a Lego barefoot. Dr. Shaw spoke calmly. Maddie held my hand. A nurse named Kevin told me I was doing great, and I told Kevin he had no legal basis for that opinion. Maddie laughed so hard she cried. Then I cried because she cried. Then I yelled because another contraction hit. Very elegant, very feminine, extremely not suitable for family Christmas cards. Julian stayed outside. He asked twice if he could come in. Both times Maddie asked me. Both times I said no. The third time, he didn't ask. He just sat in the hallway chair across from my door with his head in his hands. I could see him when the nurse opened the door. He looked destroyed, but destruction is not the same as repair. At some point, between pain and breath, I whispered, "What if I can't do this?" Maddie leaned close. Her mascara had smudged under one eye, making her look like a raccoon with medical clearance. "You already did the hard part," she said. I shook my head. "Yes," she said firmly. "You survived him leaving. You survived every appointment alone. You survived building that stupid crib with the backwards drawer. It still sticks. We'll fix it later. I hate that crib. You love that crib. I hate Julian. You can multitask." I laughed, then sobbed into the oxygen mask. For 7 months I had been brave in pieces. Brave at the grocery store, brave at the ultrasound, brave while folding tiny pajamas, brave while pretending I didn't care that other women had husbands rubbing their backs in birthing class videos online. But here in this room, with my body splitting open for a child Julian had not protected, bravery did not feel shiny. It felt like exhaustion refusing to die. Dr. Shaw said it was time to push. The world narrowed. Maddie's voice, Kevin counting. Dr. Shaw saying, "Again, Ava." Rain tapping the hospital window. My own voice breaking. Then at 10:27 p.m. my daughter arrived screaming, loud, furious, alive. Dr. Shaw placed her on my chest and I forgot the room. I forgot Camille. I forgot Julian sitting outside doing math too late. My baby was warm and slippery and real, her tiny mouth open in outrage, her fist pressed against my skin like she had complaints about the service. I cried so hard I couldn't speak. Maddie bent over us, sobbing openly now. "She's perfect," she whispered. I touched my daughter's cheek. "Hi, Lila," I said. "I'm sorry the first thing you heard was me threatening Kevin." Kevin wiped his eyes. "No offense taken." Outside the room I heard Julian break down. For 1 second I closed my eyes, then I held my daughter closer. Julian met Lila through glass. Not because I wanted to be cruel, because boundaries are not cruelty, even when guilty people bleed on them. The morning after she was born, a nurse wheeled Lila's bassinet near the nursery window for a routine check. Julian stood on the other side, unshaven, eyes red, hands flat against the glass like he could touch 7 months he had already lost. "She has Ava's mouth," Marin whispered beside him. I heard that later from Maddie, who had apparently appointed herself both witness and emotional surveillance system. Camille was gone by then. Hospital security had escorted her out after she tried to tell a nurse I was mentally unfit to make decisions. That nurse, a woman named Carla with eyebrows sharp enough to cut meat, reportedly said, "Ma'am, being disliked by you is not a diagnosis." I planned to send Carla flowers. Nora arrived before noon with a leather folder and a face that said she had already ruined someone's morning professionally. She sat by my bed while Lila slept against my chest. "I spoke with Julian," she said. "Congratulations. Did you bring holy water?" "Not billable." I smiled despite myself. Nora explained what they had. Camille's signature on the certified letter, Maddie's recording in the hallway, the suspicious text from Julian's phone, and building camera footage showing Camille carrying the letter inside on the day it was delivered. Julian had also agreed to provide device access records. "And?" I asked. "The text to you was sent from his phone while he was in Portland at a conference. He says Camille had access to his apartment and his spare passcode." I looked down at Lila. She yawned dramatically, which felt like the correct legal response. "So Camille lied," I said. "Yes, and Julian let himself be lied to." Nora's mouth softened. "Also yes. That mattered. I needed everyone in the room to understand both truths. Camille had done something cruel, calculated, maybe even legally actionable, but Julian had abandoned me before she forged anything. He chose silence before she weaponized it. Later that afternoon, Julian asked to speak with me. Nora stayed. Maddie stayed. I did not apologize for needing witnesses. Julian stood near the foot of the bed, looking at Lila like grief had learned how to breathe. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were small, maybe because the damage was so large. "I should have called," he said. "I should have come to you. I should have asked." "Yes," I said. His eyes filled. "Can I hold her?" My arms tightened around Lila before I could stop them. "Not today." Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. "Good." Learning had to start somewhere. "Will you ever forgive me?" he asked. I looked at my daughter's sleeping face. "Maybe," I said, "but forgiveness is not a custody agreement." 8 months later, Lila learned to clap by accident and acted like she had invented applause. She sat on a blanket in my new apartment in Queen Anne, smacking her tiny hands together with great seriousness while rain slid down the window behind her. Seattle had turned gray and soft outside. Inside, the living room smelled like coffee, baby lotion, and the toast I had absolutely burned, but planned to eat anyway, because motherhood lowered certain standards and raised others. The apartment was smaller than the townhouse Julian and I had shared. It was also mine. The floors creaked. The heater made a clicking noise at night, like a tiny ghost with office work. The kitchen drawer opened without threats, which felt like personal growth. Maddie came over every Sunday with groceries and opinions. Nora finalized the divorce with the calm efficiency of a woman who could staple a man's soul to a legal brief. Julian had supervised visits at first. I insisted. He did not fight me. That was the beginning of him becoming useful. He took parenting classes. He showed up on time. He learned that babies did not care about regret if their diapers were wet. He cried the first time Lila smiled at him, and I let him have that moment without softening the boundary around it. Some people wanted me to take him back. They said he had been manipulated. They said Camille had ruined everything. They said a baby needed both parents under one roof. People love saying things about roofs when they don't have to live under them. Camille faced consequences, though not the dramatic lightning strike kind people imagine. Real justice is mostly paperwork, legal fees, and people no longer returning your calls. Julian's family cut ties with her. Nora filed a civil claim for intentional emotional harm and interference. Camille's polished little world cracked in public, which for someone like Camille was its own weather event. I did not celebrate. Well, maybe a little. Quietly, with expensive cupcakes. I kept the hospital bracelet in a small box in my closet. The one with my name, the admission date, and the due date that made Julian start counting backward in the hallway. For a long time, looking at it hurt. Then one morning, Lila was asleep on my chest, warm and heavy, her little fingers curled in my shirt. Rain tapped the glass. My coffee went cold beside me because, apparently, motherhood involved maintaining several abandoned beverages at all times. I opened the box and held the bracelet. That day had not been the day Julian discovered the truth. Not really. It was the day I stopped begging anyone else to believe mine. Lila stirred and made a tiny annoyed sound as if even asleep she had strong opinions. I kissed the top of her head. Julian had started counting back that day in the hospital. But I had stopped counting the days since he left. Now I counted smaller things. Breaths, smiles, the soft weight of my daughter's hand against my collarbone, and for the first time in a long time, the numbers did not hurt. They added up to a life. Mine.